You are now listening to Talk Loud Radio, sports, nerds, and pop culture.
What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to episode 23 of the Armchair Fantasy Show, presented by TalkLoudRadio.com. Of course, you can find us on all your major podcast places, iTunes, Stitcher, etc. Always streaming in the Going for Two app that you can find on iOS and Android, and as well as at TalkLoudRadio.com. All right, guys, we have a great show today. We'll be talking some Dynasty football again with the draft just ahead here. I have a great guest coming on tonight. It's my first time meeting him. I've been following him on Twitter for quite a while. He's got some great information. So you can find him on Twitter at DynastyGuruFF. He's a writer and analyst for Roto Underworld and Dynasty Trade Calculator and co-host of the Dynasty War Room podcast. Welcome in Mr. Michael Chapeton. Is that how you pronounce it, right? Miguel, you there?
Yeah. Sorry, I had it on mute. It's Miguel Chapeton. Yeah, you're close there.
All right, sorry about that. All right, good
no
deal.
It's kind of my whole life.
Good deal. Glad to have you on finally, man. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, I mean, first, Jeff, thanks for having me on the show. I mean, we've been friends on Twitter for a long time now, so it's finally nice to be able to come on and chat fantasy football with you in more than 120 characters.
Definitely. All right, so before we jump into the Dynasty stuff, just kind of tell my listeners about yourself, how long you've been doing this, how'd you get into it, and just kind of a little bit about what you're doing.
Yeah, so I'm originally from California, now live in Minnesota, been here the last few years, moved out here for work. So I'm a diehard Niners fan, so anyone who follows me will know that I'll root for my Niners and will tweet at John Lynch all the time to draft appropriately. But I've been playing fantasy football since I was in middle school, so I'm 32 now, so it's been a while. Started on the days of good old Sporting News. I don't even know if anyone remembers what that is anymore. But started playing on there and then been going ever since. Just got into Dynasty actually more recently, and then in the last few years, and then started discovering just Dynasty podcasts at that point, and started hearing some really great minds like Sean Siegel and John Moore and then Matt Kelly, and learned more about these advanced metrics, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. I mean, my day-to-day job has me in Excel spreadsheets and looking at numbers and trends and all that. So hearing about these sort of things just kind of piques my interest naturally. So decided last year to finally join this crazy little fantasy football world on Twitter, and in the process created my own wide receiver advanced metric called the Prospect Success Indicator Model, which is basically just a weighted equation of several advanced metrics. Things like breakout age, dominator rating, all the different combine events, all put together to compare the incoming prospects to successful top 24 wide receiver profiles at the NFL level.
Definitely.
And then it kind of indexes everyone, and that tells me, all right, these guys are more likely to succeed than these other guys.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. Like I said, I've been following you on Twitter and kind of seeing some back and forth over your, what you call it, the PSI for short. It's kind of a good indicator, especially for those of us like myself that don't follow college football very much. It's a good way to sort of compare everybody. And kind of speaking on that PSI, and before we get to anything else too, I wanted to just kind of mention that I too am a Niners fan. I actually grew up on the East Coast, but I grew up in the 80s. I was a military brat, so I really didn't have a hometown. So in the 80s, of course, the Niners were the best team, and I kind of just stuck with them and just kind of stuck with them forever. So I've been a Niners fan since probably 87, 88, somewhere in that range.
Nice. See, this is where we're from.
Good deal.
I also heard the creaking pipe in the intro music too. That was nice.
Yes. Yeah, I try to make it sound, I try to find some good music on there and put some good clips in there, so kind of gets the podcast rolling a little hyped up. So it's good stuff.
Gotcha.
All right, so I wanted to bring you on. First thing we're going to talk about here is going to be your blog that you wrote up there. You had your top 12 receivers based on your PSI rankings. You did the top 12. We probably won't be able to get to all 12 guys, but I want to look mainly at your top 5 guys here, because you got some interesting picks here. Not very consensus. Everybody's got sort of the same static rankings. You go anywhere, but you got some interesting picks here in your top 5. Starting with number 3 here, you got Justin Watson from Penn. He scored a 6 on the PSI score. Talk a little bit about him. Why do you like him so much?
I mean, what is there not to like? He hits on everything that you want to see. So, number 1 being dominator rating. The thing about Justin Watson is he comes from a small school, so we don't know if he's going to get drafted or not for that reason. The NFL just doesn't usually end up drafting small school guys. You have to be really, really special to get in. I think he qualifies as being really, really special. But he didn't get invited to the combine, but he did get to go to the Senior Bowl. So we'll see where the NFL falls on him. But his dominator rating was 60%, which is first in the class, ahead of DJ Moore, ahead of Cortland Sutton, ahead of Christian Kirk, all those guys. So he has the number 1 dominator rating coming out of college. And 60% is phenomenal. That's one of the highest I've ever seen. His Phenom Index, which Phenom Index is an advanced metric that John Moore over at RotoViz created. It basically looked at your final year of market share compared to your age, and then turned into Z-scores, which I'm not going to get into exactly what all that means right now, but and then looked at compared to everyone else that came before them, and also just gave you kind of a look at whoever scored the highest there was probably a pretty good prospect. So I tweaked that a little bit and added it instead of making it the final year of market share yards, I made it best year of yards and best year of touchdowns. And he wants to be, when we see the Phenom Index, we want it to be over, I think 2.6 is what I have it at right now. And he comes in at 3.74. So he's far and away surpassing that. His breakout age is 19.7. We like it to be below 20. And then he hits on every single combine metric. And not only does he hit on it, but he also exceeds and is in the elite level for many things. I mean, a 4.4 440 is phenomenal. A 40-inch vertical leap, outstanding. And then he's got a 4.19 20-yard shuttle. So, I mean, there's nothing on his profile that you hate. So I really like this kid. I think he's going to go under the radar in both the NFL draft and in rookie drafts for Dynasty. And if you're able to snag him even in the 3rd round, I think right now in DLF, Dynasty League Football mock drafts, he's going undrafted, but I would gladly take him in the 3rd round, no problem.
Nice. So you think that he might go as a undrafted rookie, that he might get picked up after the draft if no one drafts him in the draft?
There's a chance. I mean, there's a strong chance that could happen. At the same time, he has been invited to the Senior Bowl. He has been getting more looks than kind of last year's small school superstar, which was Krishan Hogan. So maybe because he's getting more exposure than Hogan did, maybe he gets drafted. But if he gets drafted in I'm just hoping for 5th, 6th round here. If he gets drafted there, I'm 100% all in on Justin Watson. Nice.
Definitely off the beaten path for sure. I don't think I've even heard his name spoken until tonight. So good stuff there. The next guy I wanted to talk about is sort of the consensus top 2 wide receiver. You got him ranked at number 4 here, and that's Cortland Sutton. You got him at a PSI score of a 4.54. So why do you have him so low compared to everybody else that's ranked him basically 1 or 2?
The reason why he comes in at 4.54 is he just didn't quite hit the Phenom Index threshold that we were looking for. So, like I said earlier, we were looking for 2.6. He came in at 2.15. So, not terrible by any means. He just didn't quite meet that goal. So when it comes to the TSI index, yeah, he'll rank fourth. But I have no problem taking him second overall. I mean, when you're looking at my rankings, and especially when you get kind of into these really close scores, you'll have a guy who's like 4.54, and the next guy's like 4.13. I mean, honestly, you can flip a coin at that point. Take the guy you feel most comfortable with. There isn't going to be a huge difference there, but that's really kind of where he missed out. Other than that, I mean, he hit everything else. He was great with a 37% dominator rating. He's got a 19.9 breakout age. And his combine metrics, again, stood out and were extremely elite. To me, he's a better Alshon Jeffrey, and he will be an Alshon Jeffrey that gets drafted in the first round, so he'll have even better draft capital.
Nice.
So if you like Alshon Jeffrey, this is the guy to get. I think the only reason why he missed out on the Phenom Index is because another guy that's on my list here, Trey Quinn, joined him last year on the team, and Trey Quinn quickly became what ended up being, I think he was the number one receiver on that team last year. So that's kind of the knock on Cortland Sutton, is that he wasn't able to maintain that wide receiver one role on his own team once Trey Quinn joined. So, I think that's the only reason why he missed. But other than that, I mean, I've loved Cortland Sutton for the last couple of years, and I'm not going to jump off the bandwagon now. Good stuff.
And then the next guy that I wanted to talk about doesn't even appear in your top 5 or even in your top 12, and he's a kind of a consensus top 2 wide receiver, and that's Calvin Ridley. He didn't appear anywhere in your top 12 here. And I've heard some people say that maybe they don't trust Ridley because he's not your typical, receiver coming into the NFL that's going to dominate right away. What's your beef with Ridley here? Why didn't he make your top 12?
There's just a lot of red flags here. I mean, yes, technically he's 15th in my list. I do put everyone in the tiers. So and obviously there's a lot of people, like the 3 guys at the top are all in tier 1. So there's a lot of ties in between 1 and 15. And so I think Ridley, technically, if you look at tier wise, he's like 8. But specifically about Ridley, what we don't like and what the equation hates here is one, his age. He's coming in at 23.2. He might even be 24 by like early NFL season, somewhere like around September, October, around then. He only put up a 30% dominator rating, which is just barely good enough. Like that's just what you want to see, is like 30%. So it's not like he was a crazy dominator at the college level. He was just good enough. His Phenom Index was terrible. It was 0.31. I mean, when you're looking for 2.6 and you get 0.31, that's a huge concern. His breakout age was 20.7, which is not a death sentence by any means. But when you're looking for the next OBJ, the next Mike Evans, the next Devontae Adams, those guys are all sub-20 breakout ages. And then you go into his combine metrics, and when it comes to the vertical, the broad, and the 20-yard shuttle, he scored below average, below top 24 NFL receiver averages. So they weren't elite metrics by any means. And then his height-adjusted speed score, which looks at the 40 compared to your height, is also below the 100th percentile, coming in at 96.8. Again, not a total death sentence, but elite is like 110. So just to give you perspective.
Gotcha.
And so for all those reasons is why he got kind of knocked down the list. And then you just kind of look at his profile in general. I mean, a 6 foot sub 200, I would even say sub 194, because you do have guys who are just barely below 200 who succeed. I mean, he comes in at 189. You don't find very many successful profiles that have that. I mean, one of the most important things for a wide receiver that is actually pretty predictable is weight for some reason. Still haven't figured out why that's a very predictable metric, but weight's always a big thing. And I mean, you go through the years when I compare him from everyone between now and 2012, like there's just no one that fits his profile that succeeded. And the one guy I've compared him to since day one, and you're going to remember this, is AJ Jenkins. I mean, he reminds me so much of AJ Jenkins. And that was without even watching any college tape. That was just looking at the numbers, seeing what type of player he was, what type of receiver, just kind of looking it over, comparing it to A.J. Jenkins' profile. I'm like, wow, these guys are so similar. And they both went in the first round. They were both questionable in the first round, although Calvin Ridley probably has a little more hype than A.J. did at the time. And then I went and actually someone put together this great highlight video of Calvin Ridley, and I started seeing the same things that made A.J. Jenkins so bad at the NFL level. It was he couldn't get off press coverage. He was falling down at press coverage. He was just he didn't have the balance to take that on or the strength. And when you go look at his bench reps, well, I guess he did hit 15, so maybe he's that strong, but I don't know. At the end of the day, I see a lot of red flags with him. I don't like older prospects. The equation doesn't like older prospects. And I could easily see Calvin Ridley being a first round bust. I mean, a lot of first round wide receivers actually bust. Very few actually make it out. So if I'm going to bet on one, it's just not going to be Calvin Ridley.
That's a good point. I've actually seen some things where people are kind of knocking Calvin Ridley down. I think he was the consensus number 2 early on, but I think he's sort of starting to fall a little bit. I've seen him, go down to 4 or 5. Sometimes people have him 6 or 7 in fantasy drafts, in rookie drafts. So he has fallen quite a bit. And I in my dynasty draft, I actually have the 6th, 7th, and 8th pick in the first round. I don't think I'm going to take Ridley. So
no. If you can get DJ Moore, Sutton, and then a couple of running backs, you'll be set.
That's kind of what I'm hoping for there. Now, the guy that I've seen on the opposite end of that spectrum that's been kind of climbing up here that people weren't talking about early on, you've got him as your number 1, DJ Moore, and then you've got Michael Gallup from Colorado as your number 2. Talk about these two guys and why you love them so much.
Same thing just as Justin Watson. I mean, they hit on everything. I think they both graded out with perfect scores here. And I mean, DJ Moore's got a 53% dominator rating. Michael Gallup's at the 37. They both hit on the Phenom Index. I think DJ Moore actually has the highest Phenom Index of any wide receiver in the entire database. So I'd have to go back and double check that. But if he's not first, he's second. He comes in at 5.73. I mean, he's double what you're looking for. That's just ridiculous. So, I mean, their profiles are just insane, and especially for DJ Moore's. I mean, everything he did at the combine was just elite. He had a 4.42 40-yard dash, 39.5-inch vertical, 132 broad, a 4.07 20-yard shuttle, and a 6.95 3-cone. So, and he put a 15 on the bench as well. So, I just everything about his profile screams future star, and I would have no doubt taking DJ Moore as high as 102 in this draft, even though I think the first 5-6 picks should all be running backs. If someone did take DJ Moore that high, I would have no problem with it because I think he's the next OBJ, Mike Evans, kind of that level of wide receiver coming into the NFL.
Nice. I'm going to edit this podcast and cut that part out so that my Dynasty people won't hear that, so I can get him at number 6.
You should go there, just considering the depth at running back, but not every draft works out that way.
Yeah, I think I kind of looked at my competition. I got 2 guys ahead of me that are kind of stacked at running back, so they possibly might go wide receiver. One guy I know has got David Johnson, and he drafted Kareem Hunt last year, so he's pretty good at running back. Mm-hmm. So he might go wide receiver. Right. I'm hoping they kind of go wide receiver so I can get some running backs because I'm kind of light at running back myself.
Yep.
All right. So now that we talked some very technical stuff here, let's get into a little bit more just sort of good old-fashioned fantasy football talk here. The term sleeper, I know it's kind of been overused. I know when I first started playing, it was way back in probably 99, 2000, somewhere in there. Sleepers were legit sleepers. You had I literally had every homepage for every team, on my favorites, and I had to go to each homepage, every week to see who the next big guy was. Now, of course, it's blown up to the point that, you can go anywhere to find anything on anybody. and every writer is terming somebody sleeper. Everyone's a sleeper. This is a sleeper. I've even heard some people say that there's first round sleepers, which doesn't make any sense to me. If he's in the first round, it's not a sleeper. But it's just the term's just been overused. But in Dynasty, we still kind of have those sleepers, because people don't know the draft as well. There's rookies that fall. You got guys like Alvin Kamara that no one really predicted would be what he was. So we still kind of have sleepers in Dynasty football, which is kind of nice because you can do some research and do some digging and find some stuff. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the positions here, the quarterback, receiver, and running back. If you had a few guys that you liked in this upcoming draft that probably no one's heard of yet.
Yeah. So should we start with quarterback then?
Start with quarterback.
I'll give you a bit of a backwards answer here, and it's not so much a sleeper quarterback because I don't think there is one in this class. I mean, I think it sounds like all 7 quarterbacks are going in the first round according to everything you see on the internet right now.
Right.
Which probably isn't true, but I mean, you know how crazy the NFL gets over quarterbacks, so they're all going to go fairly early. There's no sleepers there, but what I'm going to say is there's more of a sleeper destination that no one's talking about. And that's Jacksonville. I'm fairly convinced Jacksonville will try to acquire a quarterback with its first-round pick, and I believe it's either going to be Lamar Jackson or Mason Rudolph if they sit and stay at their current position and don't try to trade up. Why I believe that is because they signed Blake Bortles to what is essentially just a one-year deal, and they let Chet Henne go and made, as far as I can tell, no effort to sign a backup quarterback yet. So this position is ripe for a rookie to walk in and beat out Bortles or supplant him after Bortles goes, back-to-back three pick weeks in weeks 2 and 3. You know what I mean? Like, Bortles is not the long-term answer, and Jacksonville clearly knows that because of the deal they gave him. But they have been so quiet, and all the rumors that have been going on have all excluded Jacksonville from anything that I just think they're playing it like Chicago did last year, where Chicago came out of nowhere to draft Mitch Trubisky. They didn't even tell their head coach, right? So they're a very sneaky spot for a rookie quarterback that I don't think anyone is talking about because everyone just assumes Blake Bortles is going to be the guy, and I'm not so sure about that. I think he'll start out the guy, but I don't think he'll end up being the guy come week 16. And if we think about it, Jacksonville has an elite defense. They have a solid running game, and they're primed to. They went to the championship game, so they're a Super Bowl contending team here. And when you have an elite defense and a solid running game, you can mask a lot of rookie weaknesses early on, and you don't have to search far back in history to find that type of situation that plays out and was successful. It's Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers just a few years ago.
Yep.
That's exactly what they did. They hit him behind the defense. They played to his strength. They ran the ball with Gore. Boom, boom, boom. They made it to the Super Bowl. So I think Jacksonville is exactly where the Niners were just a few years ago. They just need the right quarterback, and I don't see any reason why Lamar Jackson or Mason Rudolph can't come in there and be better than Blake Bortles if they gear the offense towards their strength. So that's my sleeper for quarterback.
That's interesting, yeah, because I think you're right. No one's talking about Jacksonville. They signed Bortles. Everyone just assumed that he's a starter. He led them to the big game last year, up against the Patriots. Almost took that game. They were leading there for a little bit before Brady went Brady on them. But I think that's a good call. I think Jacksonville could very easily, draft a young quarterback, and if he comes in and shows out better than Bortles, I think Bortles gets the start week 1 just by default because he did do that last year. But I think if he comes out and he struggles at any point, I think that they're going to make the switch for sure. You're right.
Someone had some analysis that I saw on Twitter that was like quarterbacks that have the ability to run, like Lamar Jackson or Colin Kaepernick, tend to find more success early in their career. And so I'm like, I'm all about Lamar Jackson landing in Jacksonville. One, because just the nameplate there would be great. But with the elite defense and the solid running game, just Lamar Jackson can take off and run at any point in time that he wants, or you can just throw it up to any of the receivers they have there. Jesus, that would be deadly.
Agreed. That's a good call there. All right, let's look at some of the receivers. Now, you've kind of already talked about some of them in your rankings here, but anybody we haven't talked about yet that you kind of like?
I mean, I think for me, the ultimate sleeper is Justin Watson. I mean, I'll talk about him again, just because, I mean, more people in the community are talking about him. You know, more of the experts and people that are in the know are aware of Justin Watson and what he's capable of and the numbers he's put up. And so he's on the radar there. But I think for most people, I mean, they're not going to know who this kid out of Penn is. But even within the community, no one has him in the top 10 or even in any sort of rookie ranking that is worthwhile. You know, I was on MFL today doing a mock draft, and I couldn't even find Justin Watson in MFL. So, I mean, that's how off the radar he still is. And then the fact that he's still going undrafted in mock drafts across the internet speaks volumes to the fact that he's still the biggest legit sleeper at wide receiver for me.
Yeah, as you say that, I'm kind of scrolling through here. I pulled up Mike Clay's top 80, and I'm scrolling through wide receivers, and you're right. I don't see his name anywhere mentioned. So, yeah, definitely a sleeper for sure.
No. Yeah, I mean, this class overall for wide receivers is not very strong. It's very top-heavy. If you can get one of the top 3-4 guys, great. After that, I would almost completely fade the position. Because it reminds me so much of 2013 when I go back and look at that class and who we thought was going to be great and then who actually was great. I mean, at the end of the day, I go look at 2013 and there's only 3 names that stand out. And that's DeAndre Hopkins, Keenan Allen, and Adam Thielen. And I'm looking at the top 3 this year. And those are my top 3 for 2013 in PSI. Those are the exact top 3 in that order. And I'm saying DJ Moore, Michael Gallup, and the no-namer Justin Watson, who's just like Adam Thielen was in 2013. So it's kind of eerily similar to me in that regard.
Gotcha.
So I think we're going to look back and a lot of people are going to say, how did we miss on this guy? Where did he come from? And you know, have that kind of impact.
All right. Good deal. All right. Let's go to the money position now. Obviously, the running backs, you mentioned that they would probably go, 1 through 6 basically at running back. Anybody that you can get, 3rd, 4th round in the rookie drafts that are going to be worth it?
I think when I'm looking in the 3rd, 4th rounds and then looking for a running back, you want to find kind of a satellite back plus that can be that 3rd down back that goes out and catches passes and is your Chris Thompsons of the world, but can also shoulder the workload if the main guy goes down. And to me, I think the closest thing I can find is Justin Jackson from Northwestern. I don't know how much you know about him, but he had a really productive career at Northwestern. I think he was over 1,000 yards every year he was there. So he's coming into the league with a very productive career, put up a very respectable 4.5 240. And for a guy who's 6 foot, 192 pounds, and we'll get into that in a bit. He also put up an elite agility score, posting a 95th percentile, 1088 agility score. And he compares to Shane Vereen in a lot of ways, which I think at worst is his floor, which is what I'm talking about in terms of the satellite backs, the guy to go out there and catch passes. So that's not bad, especially in the PPR league. That's great to have. But I think he could still be, considering the production he put up at Northwestern, I think he can still be the guy that if the main guy goes down, he can be that like Kenyon Drake was at the end of the year for Miami, right? He started all of a sudden putting up like 15, 20 points a game in fantasy.
Nice.
But his height to weight ratio is definitely on the lighter side. I mean, you can't be 6 foot, 193 pounds and not have a red flag for potential injury at the NFL level. So that's definitely a huge red flag. It's something to consider, but I think he's a bit of a sleeper that late in the draft.
Definitely. I'm looking at, again, Mike Clay's top 80 because it was the first thing that popped up. And he got him ranked number 60 overall, and he's the number 22 running back. So definitely a sleeper for sure, but someone to keep an eye on, especially if he gets drafted into a good spot where he can be sort of that handcuff to the lead guy there. I think that'll be a good call.
Yeah, it's all going to be about landing spots at the end.
All right, let's take a little bit of a look at of last year's rookie class. And there's a bunch of guys that were kind of drafted high in rookie drafts and kind of disappointed a little bit. And I want to kind of revisit them because a lot of these guys, take 1 or 2 years before they can actually, get some games under themselves and sort of get them, that the team behind them. Let's talk about some of the possible breakout candidates from the second year guys like Chris Godwin and John Ross and guys like that didn't really do too much last year. Who do you like going into this year?
I've got three guys for you. First one is OJ Howard, and the main reason is because Tampa Bay signed was his name Cameron Brate to a really big contract. Forget if that's his actual first name or not, but whatever, Brate. But that contract isn't actually as big as it sounded when ESPN first reported it. I mean, once you got into the details, it was really obvious that Tampa Bay can get out of that contract in the next year or two. So it's not the long-term deal that everyone thought it was, even though on the surface that's not the way it was reported. So I think right now is the time to go buy OJ Howard for pennies on the dollar. I think you've got a lot of owners that might be scared that they invested high draft capital in someone who's no longer going to be the touchdown tight end that they thought they were getting, because Brate is the red zone guy and Howard is being used more as blocking tight end. But I've always compared O.J. Howard, as many have, to Greg Olsen. This is very similar start to a Greg Olsen career. And eventually Greg Olsen kind of got out of that situation. He had to move to Carolina, which may or may not have to be the case for O.J. Howard, having to leave Tampa. But eventually he got his shot to be the guy and was top 5 tight end for many years in fantasy. So I think right now is the time to buy O.J. Howard.
Good stuff, because I actually got O.J. Howard in my my Dynasty draft last year. Luckily, I've got Zach Ertz ahead of him, so I was okay at tight end, and I'm okay holding on to him. But I definitely hope that you're right about him breaking out, because to have two good tight ends, you can't really beat that, especially with the two they're fairly young guys too.
Yeah, it might still be a year away from his breakout, but this is going to be as cheap as it gets. I think once the bullets start to fly, and the things with the issue with guys like that is the minute they have one good week throughout the NFL season, even if that's the only good week they have all year, all of a sudden the price goes all the way back up to where it was.
Yep.
Because everyone just starts believing that, now it's going to be it, and then you have to wait for it to completely deflate, and then it never really will at that point. So definitely go get him now. Second guy I have is Amar Darboh. This is someone I've written about earlier this offseason. And luckily, it's still holding true here. So the prophecy was that Seattle would lose Jimmy Graham and Paul Richardson, and Seattle wouldn't have anyone to replace all those missing targets and yards that walk out the door with those two guys. And then lo and behold, Seattle lost both Jimmy Graham and Paul Richardson, and they haven't replaced any of them. I think the only guy they brought in was 28-year-old Jaron Brown. If you believe that a 28-year-old wide receiver is going to break out now, then I've got a bridge to sell you, because
it's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. So this wide receiver class isn't very deep or strong, and Amar Darboh is entering his second year after being drafted in the third round. So he has draft capital. He also sports a 4.4 40, so he can play outside, and overall has above average athleticism across the board to go along with the 76th percentile catch radius. So, this guy's big. Let's put up a 33% college dominator rating, so solid. And unless Seattle drafts any of the top 3-4 guys, I see no reason why Darboh can't be fantasy relevant next year. And right now he is free. I picked him up off of waiver wires, I think, in every league.
I'm writing the name down right now, because I think I may have to go add him as well, because you're right.
Yeah,
Seattle doesn't have anything else. They have no other pass catching options right now outside of Baldwin.
Doug Baldwin's going to continue to get hit. You can only feed that guy so many targets. Eventually you got to give it to someone else, and it's not going to be Jaron Brown. It's not going to be, who's the tight end they signed from Carolina? What's his name? I don't really remember, but
I can't remember either.
He's old, and he hasn't never been that relevant as pass catcher. So whoever the wide receiver 2 is in Seattle, I want to buy, because that's going to be a volume role and potentially, I think, a top 24 receiver in next year's fantasy season. So
I actually have Seattle's number 2 right now in my Dynasty league, but he's more of a punt returner, kick returner kind of guy. So if this guy's
Tyler Lockett,
yes.
Yeah.
I kept him on my team because my league actually gets points for return yardage, so he's actually quite valuable. But I can get this guy on the waiver wire and kind of be sort of a wide receiver handcuff if he ends up, taking over the number 2 position there.
Yeah, and I think that's what's going to happen is people still believe in Tyler Lockett and think he's going to be the guy. But I mean, we're going into the year 3 or 4 of the Tyler Lockett
I think it's 4,
here,
yeah.
and he hasn't really done anything.
Yep.
I mean, normally you want to see by year 3 the breakout. I mean, can it happen in year 4? Sure, but I mean, with each passing year, that percent chance of it happening dwindles, right? So, and he had that catastrophic leg injury, which I mean, for a speed guy to break your leg the way he did is not ideal, right?
Not a good thing for sure.
So Amara Darboh is going to just continue to be cheap for that reason, because I think people are still going to buy into Tyler Lockett because he's at least flashed previously, while Darboh has just been on the bench, right?
Fair enough. You got one more guy for us?
Yeah. The third one would be Marlon Mack, and for no reason other than like, who else do they have? And he's on the Colts, in case you didn't know. So, I mean, they got no one else. I think Matt Jones. I mean, do you really believe in Matt Jones? Like, you got rid of Gore. I can't name another running back on that roster right now. So, unless Indianapolis drafts like a Chubb or Penny or Geis, I mean, I think Mack will be could become the guy. And even if they do draft one of those guys, I mean, I think Mack's floor. And then I said this maybe earlier today or yesterday on Twitter. I think Mack's floor is, one part of a successful running back tandem like we see in Atlanta. Whether he's a Devontae Freeman or whether he's a Tevin Coleman, doesn't really matter. Both of them have a safe floor and are usable in fantasy. I think Marlon Mack is good enough for that. But if he can become the guy, because Indianapolis doesn't invest heavily in the running back position this year, then again, he's someone who's probably can be had pretty for like a second-round pick, especially the closer you get to the rookie draft.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think someone in my league, actually the league champion, actually picked up Marlon Mack towards the end of the season, and he sort of lucked out because then, of course, they got rid of Gore. And like you said, he's all they have right now. So I'm kind of hoping you're wrong on that one, because the league champion, he's won 2 years in a row, and I don't want him to get a third. So.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he's building that dynasty.
Yep. All right, let's take a quick commercial break, and then when we come back, we'll play a little keep cut trade and get some listener questions too. You want to do that?
Yep.
Do you need advice for your fantasy football team? How about your DraftKings or FanDuel lineup? GoingFor2.com has you covered. GoingFor2.com has exclusive content from some of the best fantasy writers in the industry, whose credentials include Bleacher Report, Fantasy Pros, and Fantasy Life. From advice columns to player ranks, GoingFor2.com has it all. Sign up for our newsletter to have all of our content sent to your inbox. Start winning today. Visit GoingFor2.com, because no one remembers the extra point.
Today's show is brought to you by Daily Fantasy Nerd. They have everything you need to build better lineups. You can analyze stats, view up-to-the-minute Vegas lines, check player game logs, import and manage your own projections, build optimal lineups, and a bankroll tracker. To get started for free, visit goingfor2.com/dailyfantasynerd. That's goingfor2.com/dailyfantasynerd. Start winning today.
This is it. What? Lucini pouring from the sky. Let's get rich. What?
All right, guys, welcome back. We are here with Miguel Chapeton. I'm gonna keep messing that name up, man. It's I don't know why.
That's all right.
Again, you can find him on Twitter at Dynasty Guru FF. We are talking, of course, Dynasty football here, and we're going to kick off the second half here. I want to talk about some of the top ranked guys, the consensus ranked guys, and do some pro comparisons. Everyone loves to do the pro comparisons. I know us analysts, we kind of don't like it because we don't want to compare this player to this player, but I think it helps the people that don't really watch it as much, helps them kind of compare, who they think they might be in the NFL. And we'll start off with the guy that you're not so high on, Calvin Ridley. What do you think his pro comparison is? I hope it's not AJ Jenkins.
Well, like I said, yeah. I gave that one away earlier. So yeah, he's not only AJ Jenkins, he's a less athletic AJ Jenkins. And I know people are going to hate that comp because they look back and like, whoa, AJ Jenkins, bombed. And yeah, he bombed, but at this point in AJ Jenkins' career, if we go back that many years, I mean, he was a highly regarded prospect. So And by actually every metric that I have, AJ Jenkins should have succeeded. I mean, he was one of the biggest busts I've ever seen, him and Stephen Hill. So, AJ Jenkins failed once he got to the NFL for a lot of reasons that perhaps aren't quantifiable. I mean, I think, and I mean, you're a Niner fan too, so maybe you can chime in on this. I remember just hearing the training camp reports of him. I think it was like from day one, just getting knocked to the ground, not being able to stay on his feet, not being able to catch anything, and it just felt like he got really demoralized very quickly. And maybe that's just he just didn't have that passion, that fire for the game, that drive to like want to be better. Like, maybe that was it. I don't know. I mean, I was pretty young at the time, but that looking back, that's kind of what it feels like now. But I don't know if you remember much about AJ Jenkins' career during that time.
I remember during that time, I think I was excited to have him on my team, but I remember our receiver core was not very good. I can't remember who exactly we had at that time. I have to go back and look at the roster.
Yeah, we didn't have anyone. Like,
we had nobody. And the fact that he couldn't get on the field with who we had, it just kind of speaks volumes as to what he was doing in practice. And then, like you said, a lot of this game sometimes is just confidence. And I think his confidence was shattered. He had no confidence in himself. I think that sort of snowballed. And, he only played, I think, 3 games his rookie season. I think he had 1 catch. And then, of course, the next season he got traded to Kansas City and just never really, got off the ground, really. I mean, the poor kid he was just, like you said, demoralized. I think he had the talent. I just think he came into the NFL. He was overmatched. And instead of taking that challenge and sort of, making his game better, he kind of shrunk and never really stood up to what he could do.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think he had all the physical tools to do it. I think just mentally, he just wasn't ready for the NFL. And that happened. And that's just something we can't project. I mean, we don't know what's going on between the ears of all these prospects, right? I mean, we can only gauge what we can see. So, Ridley compared to an AJ Jenkins prospect is, I think, a solid comparison for him. All
right. Next one I got here is probably the top 3 running back, Darius Geis. What is he kind of prospect out for?
Marshawn Lynch, and I think everyone had the same comp for him. I mean, you watch him run; it's the same kind of violent style that Marshawn Lynch was known for, and even off the field. I mean, they're both kind of quirky individuals. It seems so. Both on and off the field, I think Darius Geis is the next Marshawn Lynch.
That's a pretty good comp right there. I think if that's the case, I would love to have him on my squad for sure. All right, sticking with the running backs here, who do you got for Ronald Jones II?
I don't have a comp for him, but I know who he's not. He's not the next Jamal Charles, which is what everyone was touting back in January. I don't. It's hard to gauge Jones only because he was injured, and we got injured during the 40 at the combine, and then I'm not sure he ever quite healed by the time he went to run his pro day, which was also another slow 40. Everyone says to kind of go back and watch tape on him because everyone thinks it's like a 4.3 40 on tape, but he ran like a 4.65. So, wow. Truth is probably somewhere in the middle. Right. He's not the next Jamal Charles.
So he's not Jamal Charles.
Made his money catching the ball, and Ronald Jones hasn't proven that he can catch at the college level.
Fair enough. All right, running backs again because it's the money position. Nick Chubb.
Jonathan Stewart. And I think people look at Jonathan Stewart now and they're like, oh, that's not a very sexy name. But again, let's go back to when Jonathan Stewart got drafted. He was the number 1 running back, I think, that year. I mean, he was a big time prospect coming out, and he was super athletic. And maybe it's because of the way Jay Stu was used, especially very early on in his career. It was him and D'Angelo Williams just sharing that load in Carolina. But let's also look at how long Jonathan Stewart has been in the league.
Yep.
I mean, that's a testament to how good he is, right? So maybe he never had the amazing career that we wanted out of him, like an Ezekiel Elliott type, David Johnson, Todd Gurley-like career, but he did have a solid career. And Nick Chubb athletically profiles very similarly to Jay Stu.
Yeah, I think Jay Stu, I think one of the things that I say a lot is sometimes opportunity trumps talent. And I think because he played sort of in that shared backfield, he didn't get the opportunity that some of the other running backs have gotten over their careers. I think, with the year that he actually was, finally out of the shadow of him, I think he had a pretty good season that year. And then they go out and they draft Christian McCaffrey, and of course he shares the backfield again. So I think if he had been given the opportunity, I think he could have been a much better running back, at least stats wise. I think overall, I think he's still a good running back, but stats wise, it didn't show up.
Yeah, by the time they gave him his shot, I mean, he's already approaching the over the hill mark for running backs, or at least when you're on the downside of his career. And who knows what Jonathan Stewart could have done between the ages of 21 and 25 that he just had the backfield to himself.
Yep, exactly. All right, the next two I got on here are kind of limelight quarterbacks, sort of the guys that are on the fence here. We got Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson. You got pro comps for those two?
Again, I think everyone's kind of got this for Baker, and it's Drew Brees, but more athletic. Someone who can really kind of get out there and run and do the things to kind of escape the pocket a bit more, but just due to the height and his accuracy, it's Drew Brees.
That's a good comparison. I've heard the other comparison. I'm sure you've heard it as well.
Oh, the other one.
The guy from Cleveland Browns, not in the league anymore.
That is the laziest comparison. The laziest. Just because, all right, Baker Mayfield, yes, he got arrested one time for doing something, for being drunk, and then while being drunk, making a terrible decision of trying to run away from the cops. But let's think about it. He was in college. We've all done dumb shit in college. So I don't hold it against him at all.
Fair enough.
And it's not like he's done anything else. He doesn't have this Johnny football money sign type of persona coming around. I mean, he's very passionate about it on the field, but they're not even close.
I agree with you 100%, but I've heard that thrown around quite a bit in the fantasy football world, and I'm kind of like, I don't really see it. So, what about Lamar Jackson? I've heard a comp for Lamar Jackson, and I want to see if you had the same comp or not.
Deshaun Watson meets Michael Vick.
Nice. It's a little bit of a hybrid there.
So, yeah, a little bit of a hybrid. I think just with Lamar Jackson's ability to run, it's very reminiscent of Vick. Because Lamar Jackson's elite in the open field. I mean, just a stud. And then when you look at just kind of arm strength and overall success in the college level, I mean, it's very similar to what Deshaun Watson was able to do. So, and both Vic and Watson, we know Watson, I think all we have is 7 to 9 games in them, have had success in the NFL. So I'm hopeful for Lamar Jackson's future here as he enters the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's the guy that would probably, at least to me, have the biggest chance to have a fantasy impact just because of his legs early on. So yeah, I think I like Lamar Jackson as well. I've heard the Michael Vick comparison as well, so that's the one that I'd kind of heard a lot of. But interesting, you went with a little bit of a hybrid there. Last one I got here is another running back. We got Rashad Penny.
Matt Forte.
That's
the same kind of do it all. Can run between the tackles, can go out and catch passes, both from a small school, just that all-around back. So I'm learning a lot of Matt Forte.
Matt Forte, that's a good comp. If he has a career like Matt Forte, I'm sure he'd be quite happy.
I mean, fantasy owners would be thrilled. Matt Forte was a stud for so long.
Yes, he was. I actually owned him for quite a while. He was one of my guys because he kind of fell under the radar each year. No one trusted him. They were all they didn't really trust his upside. But man, every year I got him sort of in those middle rounds, and I loved having him on my team for sure.
Yep.
All right, let's do a little keep cut trade. Are you familiar? Are you familiar with how to play keep cut trade?
Yep.
All right.
I'm familiar.
All right. For the listeners that
ones here too, man.
Yeah. For the listeners that may not know what this is, basically I'm gonna give you 3 players. You got to keep one, you got to cut one, and you got to trade one. Some of these could be real life dilemmas that teams might actually be having, but some of them are just for fun, just to see who you like more than the other guy. So the first one I got here is 3 receivers that change teams this offseason. Of course, their value will change with their new team. I got Jarvis Landry, Brandon Cooks, and Sammy Watkins. Who are you going to keep, who are you going to cut, and who are you going to trade?
This is the one where I just want to keep them all. So I initially had trading Jarvis Landry, but I'm actually going to switch it, and I'm going to Oh, actually, no. Yeah, I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to trade Jarvis Landry because he's got the most success, the biggest kind of name, especially within PPR. And I just don't know if he's going to get that same volume in Cleveland that he got in Miami. I mean, he was getting 160, almost 170 targets a year in Miami. I mean, that's just insane. Like, no one ever gets that. So now he's got to go to Cleveland, where he's also competing with Josh Gordon, who hopefully is good again. We really don't know what Josh Gordon is. I mean, he looks okay when he came back. He didn't look like the Josh Gordon of old, in my opinion. But he's also got Tyrod, and Tyrod doesn't throw, 600 times a year like Miami did. I mean, he throws at max like 400 times a year. So right there, if that stays true and Tyrod stays throwing close to 400 times a year, then Jarvis Landry's target share immediately goes down. So his value will go down. So I'm trading Jarvis. And then I'm going to... so tough. I'm going to cut Sammy Watkins. Here's where I'm going to change it up. I'm going to cut Sammy Watkins. Reason being, he hasn't really done a whole lot the last few years, even though I still strongly believe in Sammy Watkins. I think there's a lot of other outside forces there that resulted in his kind of less than ideal seasons that he put up. But more importantly, Andy Reid doesn't really support wide receiver ones very much in his career. I think Terrell Owens and then Tyreek Hill. You really can't think of very many others. So for that reason, I'm going to cut Watkins. Even though I kind of believe that Andy Reid is going to change that entire offense and that maybe now he'll support one. But and then I'll go ahead and keep Brandon Cooks because I think Brandon Cooks could have the season Sammy Watkins should have had Sammy Watkins been traded now and gotten rapport with Jared Goff rather than a week before the season started.
Fair enough. I think I'm pretty close to what you had, but I think I'm actually going to keep Jarvis Landry because I think that Tyrod Taylor will be sort of a check down machine, and Jarvis Landry is that guy underneath. I think his target share does go down. I think his value does go down. But I play in PPR leagues, and I think the PPR guy is definitely going to be Jarvis Landry. I think Cooks and Watkins are sort of the big play guys, and I'm not really... I like consistency. I don't want the one big game and then the games that they kind of don't do anything. I like to have a guy I can plug in there and just, constantly get me, 9, 10, 11, 12 points a game. So I'm going to keep Jarvis Landry. I'm cutting Sammy Watkins only because it's kind of things what you said with the Chiefs. They want to run the ball. They have Tyreek Hill already there. They already don't support the receivers that, I think they famously had a season where they didn't have a single touchdown by a wide receiver. That doesn't happen very often, but they managed to do it for an entire season. That's
true. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and they've got a not rookie quarterback, but a second-year quarterback getting his first season as a starter, Patrick Mahomes. So we don't know what he's going to be like. So we don't know how he can stretch the field with Sammy Watkins. So I'm going to get rid of Sammy Watkins, and then I'm going to trade Brandon Cooks because coming from the Patriots, everyone just seems to have this sort of high pedestal guy for Patriot players. And, as long as he has that stigma, he was a former Patriot player, I think he'll get me the most value, I think, most bang for my buck if I trade Brandon Cooks now.
Yep.
All right. The next three I got here are three potential breakout running backs that could have the backfield to themselves based on a few things that happened this offseason. One of them you kind of already talked about, but I got Kenyon Drake of the Dolphins, Marlon Mack of the Colts, and now Devontae Booker with C.J. Anderson gone has that backfield currently to himself. That could change though, but Devontae Booker is the third one there. Who you keeping? Who you cutting? Who you trading?
I'm trading Kenyon Drake 100%. I don't think he's got the profile of a workhorse back. Plus, he's got the never going to retire Frank Gore on his back, and Frank Gore just always has a way of getting his way on the field. And so I don't really believe in Kenyon Drake. I think we just kind of caught lightning in a bottle at the end of the last year and that's all that really was. I think he's better suited for just kind of a third down role. And if people are valuing him as a starting running back, then I will gladly trade him as a starting running back. I am going to keep Marlon Mack for the reasons I've stated earlier. I mean, right now they've got no one else on the roster, and he was pretty impressive as a prospect. I always kind of liked him, and I think even if they do add someone, I think he's still going to provide value in year 2. He showed a few flashes last year, so if we can get luck back and the offensive line gets them a little bit better, Marlon Mack could definitely have some value. And I'm cutting Devontae Booker because I 100% believe the Denver Broncos are going to bring in a Rashad Penny, Darius Geis. If they can get their hands on Saquon Barkley, they'll do that. I don't think they believe in Booker, and neither do I.
All right, fair enough. I'm going a little bit different direction than you. I'm actually going to try to trade Booker. I'm going to do this obviously before the draft. When everybody thinks Booker is the number 1, because I'm in the same mindset as you. I think they're going to get a running back in the draft, but some owner may not think that way. They might think, oh, Booker's the number 1 in Denver. Denver likes to run the ball. Let me get Booker. Andrews had a good season there, so I'm going to try to get as much as I can from Booker now before the draft. I think his value goes down considerably after the draft. I too am keeping Marlon Mack for what you just said. He is basically what the Colts have right now. I think he has the build of a number 1 running back. I think he can be that guy if given the opportunity. And Kenyon Drake, I'm going to cut Kenyon Drake as much as I hate to say it, because I actually have him on my Dynasty team. But as you said, he doesn't really, he's not really the number 1 guy. I think they'll probably get another person in there other than Frank Gore as well. He'll become that sort of third down back again like he was before. He's fast, he can catch some passes, but I don't think he's going to, ever be at number 1 running back. So I'm going to cut him.
Can't argue with that.
All right. The next 3 I got here are going to be 3 high upside quarterbacks that are in good situations this year. We got the aforementioned Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. We got Mitch Trubisky now with a ton more weapons there in Chicago. And we got A.J. McCarron, who projects to be Buffalo's number 1 quarterback. Who are you going to keep? Who are you going to cut? And who are you going to trade?
I'm going to cut A.J. McCarron. I think everyone would. So that's the easy one. Buffalo doesn't have any weapons. I don't really like where they're going with their team. I think they're probably picking first next year. If the roster obviously they're going to add people in the draft, but they're going to also trade a lot of picks, probably 2 to move up. So, and they could easily acquire a new quarterback. So I am going to go ahead and cut A.J. McCarron today. And then I'm going to trade Mitch Trubisky. And I know that's he's a really popular player right now, especially with the new coach, and everyone thinks they're going to be the Rams of 2018. That's getting thrown around so much that it's almost feels like it's not even going to happen. But I'm going to trade Mitch Trubisky, one, because I'm not entirely sure that they're going to be the Rams of 2018. That just doesn't happen every year, so let's not just project because it happened one year, it's going to happen again. And then I'm going to keep Patrick Mahomes because even though Patrick Mahomes only played a little bit last year, I felt like every throw he had was a highlight reel throw. So here's where I was struggling with keeping Sammy Watkins earlier, because I have a feeling Andy Reid is going to change that offense to be a little more Texas Tech and a little less Andy Reid. And they're going to open it up, and they're going to let Patrick Mahomes. I think Alex Smith kind of held them back, and them being just the Kansas City Chiefs in general, and that offense back. There was only so much they could do with that offense. I think Patrick Mahomes kind of opens that up a bit more for them. And Andy Reid has always kind of been a chameleon coach that way, where he's always adapted new things and he learns from his peers. So I'm kind of excited for the Chiefs offense more than I am than Chicago.
Yeah, I think I'm going the exact way that you are. I think A.J. McCarron gets cut. One thing I wanted to point out is kind of interesting too, because a lot of times when I do these, I look at cold weather, and all 3 guys here play in cold weather cities. They play outdoor cities, so that's not going to come into effect. You got basically Buffalo, Chicago, and Kansas City, which come December, it's going to be snowing in there for sure. So it's not going to affect one more than the other. But yeah, I'm cutting McCarron. Right. They have no weapons there, like you said. They were almost to the point last year they were going to tank, and then they decided, wait a minute, we're actually doing okay. Let's not tank. and now they're back to tanking again. So I don't know what's going on up there. And then Mitch Trubisky. I think, as you said, he's been kind of popular. His stock right now is very high. I think he's got some new weapons there. Everyone's going to be talking about Allen Robinson and their tight end that I can't think of his name right now. It's escaping my mind, but of the Eagles, they got that guy too. So with his weapons there, the running game they got, he's a popular player. His draft stock's pretty high. So I'm going to try to trade him right now. And then Patrick Mahomes, like you said, I'm going to keep him. I think Andrew Reid knows how to make quarterbacks. He recognizes good quarterbacks. And I think he's going to turn Patrick Mahomes into his next quarterback. I think Mahomes also has the advantage of having a great running game. He's got Tyreek Hill, who can catch those little 2-yard passes and take it to the house. So he has that advantage for him as well. And of course, he's got Sammy Watkins over the top. I think he's got all the tools to be a good quarterback going forward. I'm going to keep Mahomes as well.
Yeah.
All right, we got one last one. I'm sorry?
That's a good call.
All right, I got one last one here. Is going to be the second-year tight ends. We've got the first one here is David Njoku, who kind of disappointed in Cleveland last year. We got one of our guys, George Kittle, had a pretty good season, especially after we got Jimmy G. And then O.J. Howard, you talked about earlier. Who are you going to keep? Who are you going to cut? Who are you going to trade?
I am going to keep George Kittle, partly because I'm a Niner fan, and partly because once Jimmy Garoppolo got there, I mean, George Kittle just lit on fire.
He definitely did.
It was a little bit of a preview into maybe what's to come this year, and he's just as athletic. I mean, not just as athletic, but he's nearly as athletic as Njoku and Howard is. So I don't see a drop off there in athleticism. And I think situation-wise and knowing the offenses they're in, Shanahan offense is one that you always want to buy a piece of. And so if I can get George Kittle as my tight end, I'll be happy with that. I'm going to cut David Njoku. As much as I love David Njoku and would love to get him on my team eventually, I just don't think this is the time. Again, you have so many unknowns with the Cleveland offense right now. And so many passing weapons. I mean, between Landry, who they just paid a big contract to, and Gordon, and you have Duke Johnson out of the backfield, and even Carlos Hyde, even though he's inefficient as a pass catcher, I'm sure they'll throw him the ball a little bit. And Corey Coleman, what's really left for Njoku at that point? It can't be much. So he's not going to be a top 10 tight end. He's probably top 15 at best, more like top 20. And then O.J. Howard, I'll go ahead and trade him because I think he still has the name value, and someone's going to probably try and get him now that they put more pieces around that offense and if they get a run game and all that.
Yep, I'm going exactly the same way you're going. I'm going Kittle because I am a Niners fan. Like you said, it plays a little bit of a part to it, but I also think of the three guys here, he probably has the least name value. I think outside of 49ers fan, Kittle probably isn't even known. So I think that trying to trade him would be, hard to do. People, trying to convince him he's a top tight end will be hard to do. So I'll keep him. I too will cut Njoku. I think he is an athletic freak that is in an offense that has a lot of pieces that are going to be wanting the ball. And I think he's probably last in the totem pole right now. So I think I'm going to cut him and trade O.J. Howard because I think he has the most value. He was the top tight end last year. So I think that even though they signed Cameron Brate and there's a whole split there between the tight ends, I think O.J. Howard still is a pretty popular pick in the fantasy football realm. So I'm going to try to trade him as well.
Nice.
All right. The last segment we got here is some listener questions. I posted some things on Twitter, getting the listeners to kind of leave me some questions for you to answer on the show. So we got about 6 or 7 questions here that I'm going to ask you. This first one here is from a friend of mine on Twitter. He goes the handle of @1fantasyg. Who is your breakout buy now player for this coming season?
I mentioned him earlier. I think it's Amar Darboh. And then until Seattle proves otherwise by adding better talent around him, which at this stage is likely not happening. Free agency is over. All the big names are gone. And we know that this wide receiver class is weak. So going to need a few years before any of those guys really come on. And right now they're not really tied. And there's no rumors of any like DJ Moore going to Seattle, Sutton going to Seattle, Michael Gallup going to Seattle. Like I haven't really heard any of that. So I think it's Amar Darboh.
All right, good call. Definitely got that name written down. I'm gonna go see if he's in my waiver wires. I believe he probably is, but maybe adding him coming up here pretty soon. All right, this one comes from Brandon Bailey from my Facebook fan page. With everyone on the LA Rams, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Minnesota defense, is there any sleeper defense that no one will see coming this season?
Let me go with Chicago. Just never count out a Vic Fangio defense. They were pretty solid last year. They just had a terrible offense and terrible coaching in John Fox. But the defense was always solid, always came prepared to play. And if you're putting in a better offense, this is all supposed to be better like the Rams, then I'm buying that Chicago defense.
All right, good stuff there. I'm actually taking the 49ers as my sleeper defense. I know I'm kind of a homer in that sense, but I think
that was my second one.
Yeah, if you look at the second half of our season, we were actually pretty good. I mean, secondary kind of struggled, but we were good at stopping the run.
Yeah.
We were much better defense toward the end of the season than we were in the beginning of the season for sure. And I think if we continue to add pieces there, I think we'll be good to go.
And a lot of that credit has got to go to Jimmy G because he kept us in games. Like didn't have our defense out there just gassed at all times because Hoyer couldn't do anything other than 3 and out. So
yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Agreed 100% there. All right, the next one I got is from Cody Everett of the Fantasy Football Connect Facebook page. What is Allen Hurns' value now that Des Bryant is gone? Of course, Allen Hurns is in Dallas now. He used to be with Jacksonville. Had one big season and then kind of fell off the map. But what's his value now that he's in Dallas?
I just saw him get traded for I think the 2.1 in my 16-team league. So he went with an early second-round pick there. I think I'd rather have the early second-round pick personally. So I'm going to say like late second is probably good for Allen Hurns.
All right.
Only because the Cowboys, they're going to draft the number one guy. Like we know this. They just cut Dez, and all signs point to DJ Moore or Cortland Sutton at this point. I don't think Calvin Ridley is really in play for them. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's going to be Cortland Sutton. He plays the same position Dez did. He plays the X. He's got the same build. And I think he can be just as successful. I mean, he's going to be the next, like, Alshon Jeffrey. And at that point, Allen Hurns' value is completely squashed. So,
that's a good call.
I'd rather have an early second-round pick, so I'd throw a late second, early third for him. But at the same time, are we even sure he's the best receiver on the team right now?
That's true.
I'm not. I'm really not. Like Cole Beasley has shown he can be pretty effective. Ryan Switzer, who they drafted last year, replaced Beasley. Is someone who's kind of interesting. Noah Brown, another interesting name out there. And then even Katie Cannon, another player that I'd be interested in if he ever got his head on straight. I mean, the guy's just a total knucklehead, but he has the talent physically to be a good wide receiver in the NFL. So I'm just not even sure Allen Hurns is the best wide receiver on the team. He's just the most well-known.
All right, fair enough. The next one I got is from Pam Good, also from the Fantasy Football Connect Facebook group. Which Browns receiver has more value in the short term and long term, Jarvis Landry or Josh Gordon?
Jarvis Landry. He got paid. He's going to be there for a while.
This is true.
Gordon signed his restricted free agent 1-year deal or whatever the hell that is. So we're not even sure if he's going to be around next year, and we don't even know how good he is. I mean, he came out, there was some plays where he looked good, but most of the times he was kind of washed out. Of course, they didn't have a good quarterback, but he didn't really rise above it. Before Gordon was suspended for so many years, he didn't have a good quarterback and he looked good. So we just don't know what to expect of him. So I'm going to say Jarvis Landry.
I agree with you on that one, and I'll tell you why. I think that year that he had that humongous breakout, I actually owned him, so I kind of followed him pretty closely that year. And there were a lot of stories coming out that he wasn't even required to run the route of the play. He was more like, backyard football, just go out and get open. And he never really sort of grew in that sense where he just sort of was just super ultra talented. He was the fastest guy in the field. The moves that he can make were just unbelievable. But half the time he wasn't even running the correct routes. So I think that if you look at that and then the fact that he sort of lost his step because he's been out of the league for so long, if he doesn't step up his game as far as running the routes and learning the playbook and stuff like that, I think that he's going to struggle a little bit. Landry is an excellent route runner. I think, he kind of compensates for a lot of things with, not being the biggest guy in the field. I think Landry has definitely got the longer term value here.
Wow, that's good insight there. Yeah, I've never heard that before, but I wouldn't be surprised either. I mean, they let Johnny Manziel on the field without knowing a single play. So
this is true.
That's Cleveland Browns for you.
This is true. All right, the next one we got here is Michael Cunningham of the Fantasy Football Now Facebook group. Which of the upcoming rookie quarterbacks have the best long-term prospect? Of course, a lot of that has to do with where they're going to end up. But if we're going to just decide right now before the draft, which one are you taking?
It's Baker, my Lord and Savior Mayfield. Just hands down. I think he's the best prospect to come out in a very, very long time. Maybe the best. And that's even above Luck. So
nice.
I believe that much in Baker Mayfield.
I'll tell you this. I did a podcast. It's probably been 3 shows ago. I had 8 experts come on. I gave them each 4 teams to draft for, 2 weeks before the podcast. So they all kind of had their big boards. They knew who they were drafting for. And then, we just went live, no one knew who was taking anybody. We just kind of did it like a live draft of the first round. And the guy who had number 1 overall, he had the Browns, and he took Baker Mayfield, which kind of threw off the entire draft. I kind of caught some flack for it from some of my readers and listeners, thinking that would never happen, which it probably won't happen. But hearing you talk about Baker Mayfield being the longest term prospect, that kind of goes back to what maybe he was.
I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I saw something recently, and it's not shocking at all, because they brought in Scott McCloughan as a draft advisor this year. And Scott McCloughan, even before he got hired by the Browns, said his number 1 quarterback by a country mile was Baker Mayfield. So if you bring that guy in, help you find a quarterback, and his number 1 guy before you even hired him is Baker Mayfield, then you probably hired him for his review on Baker Mayfield. So you have a strong voice in there, touting Baker and hoping that they draft him. But beyond that, I saw that it was a rumor out there that it's split, and that it's Dorsey, McCloughan, and what's his name? The last analytics guy that's there with them, Steve Podesta, are all on Team Baker, and that it's the coaching staff, Hugh, I forget who the offensive coordinator is now, from Pittsburgh, and then someone else, or I think the owner, are all Team Darnold.
Huh.
I think it's down to those 2. I still think it's going to be Darnold at the end of the day. I've never bought this Josh Allen nonsense. I think that's all just smoke and mirrors. But I wouldn't be surprised if they shocked everyone and went Baker Mayfield. It all depends on whose voice ends up winning. And honestly, I don't see why Hughes should win. He's 2-32 or whatever.
Yeah.
At this point, Dorsey is likely to be there longer than Hugh is. So if I'm Dorsey, why would I draft someone for my coach? I would draft someone that's going to save my job and hope that my coach can get the most out of it. So
that's a good call there. It'd be kind of cool if it does happen, because then I can go back and be like, look, on my podcast, we called it, even though I kind of didn't buy it at the time, but it would be kind of cool if it did happen for sure.
Yeah, it would be cool. It would be the first good move Browns have ever done.
Definitely. All right, so Cody Everett actually had a couple questions here. He asked one earlier in this, but I want to go ahead and get to both of these. So what are your thoughts on David Johnson, coming back from injury with a new coach, a new offense, a new quarterback? Everything's kind of new. Is he still number one overall?
Number 1 overall? No. That's got to be Todd Gurley. But last I checked, David Johnson isn't dead. He can still catch. He can still run. And he's an elite athlete at both of those. So David Johnson is still going to be a top 5 guy. And he's one of only 2 weapons on that entire team at the moment, assuming Larry Fitzgerald still has enough in the tank for one more year as a slot receiver, which I think he does. And if Sam Bradford can stay healthy, which is a huge, huge if, I think he'll be fine because Sam Bradford is kind of a check down machine anyway. He doesn't really throw the ball that deep. He's more on timing routes, just quick dump offs, short throws. So I think both Fitz and DJ benefit from that. But if Sam Bradford is out after week 1 again and you're stuck with Mike Lennon, well then
it'll all go downhill from there.
DJ is still going to be okay. But he's definitely not going to be the one, that's for sure.
All right. And then the other question from him is it time to sell on Antonio Brown with his age and with the countdown to Big Ben's retirement?
That's a good question. How old is Antonio Brown? I'm going to look it up real quick. Come on. Install.
Yeah, I want to say he's 30 because he had a late breakout. He's
29.8 right now, so he will be 30 this year. God, he's had so many 1,000-yard seasons already, and there's only so many you get. I'm going to say, if you want to sell for top dollar, then yes, this is the time to sell. If you don't mind selling later on for 80 cents on the dollar, then no, I don't think this is the time to sell. Because I definitely think he can move back, and he's got the profile to move right back into the slot as he gets older, and just play from the slot role and have successful years into his mid-30s like Larry Fitzgerald.
I was just going to say that would be like Larry Fitzgerald has done.
So Larry Fitzgerald obviously isn't worth what he was worth when he was Larry Fitzgerald out on the outside, but if you still want solid production, I think you can hold Antonio Brown his whole career. He's always going to pay off for you. I'm not really too concerned about his quarterback situation. I mean, let's look at Larry Fitzgerald. He hasn't really had much of a quarterback for a while now. So I'm not concerned about that. I think that always kind of resolves itself. And even if you do get like a Jacoby Brissett back there, those are guys that lock in on the number one guy and will pepper them with targets all day long. So
true story.
From that perspective, I'm never really concerned. I think that's always a great way to buy someone, but not a great reason to sell someone. So yeah, kind of two-part question. If you want full value and you want to cash in today and get all kinds of things, then by all means sell them. But if you don't mind selling them later on and getting a little less, but having a valuable wide receiver on your team, then go ahead and keep them.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to your roster and who you have. Like if you just have Antonio Brown and a bunch of nobodies, then maybe you sell Antonio Brown to sort of, get some people in there, get some studs in there, get some, decent draft picks or whatever, and build your team up. But I think if you've got a pretty solid team already and you want to win some more championships, I think you keep Antonio Brown, and so basically till the wheels fall off. Because like you said, he will be good for quite a while, even if he goes into the slot. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. All right, we got one last question here. This one's sort of tongue-in-cheek from Mike Dietrich of the Yahoo Experts Dynasty Group. Will Mike Wallace be able to stay under 250 pounds for the season? It's kind of a Eddie Lacy incentive for him to stay underweight. What do you think? You think he can make it all season under 250?
Yes, I think he can, 100%. Unless his name is Calvin Benjamin, I'm not concerned.
All right, fair enough. All right, thanks again for coming on, Miguel. I really appreciate you coming on. Again, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yep, definitely. Follow him on Twitter. He's a great follow. Lots of good information. It's at Dynasty Guru FF. And definitely want to get you back on again after the draft so we can talk about where these players actually ended up and who gained value and who lost value, which team they went to.
Absolutely, yeah. This was fun. Let's do it again soon.
All right. Have a good night, and we're out.
All right, you too. Good night.